I'm Hunter, and this is the Steps Together podcast, and I'm here with Abi Feltham. Do you want to tell us who you are?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Abi Feltham. I am a content creator. I'm 36 and I'm from London.
Love that.
Yeah, that's basically me.
And are you in recovery?
Yes, I'm in recovery.
Nice.
Yeah.
How long do you have?
It will be 4 years on April 1st.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Which is also April Fool's Day. So when I first got sober and I told all my friends and family that I was going to stop drinking, they all thought it was an April Fool's joke. It wasn't. I was like, actually, I'm deeply depressed and I can't stop drinking. So it's not actually funny. And they're like, oh, okay, this is actually serious. Like, yeah. Yeah.
Love that. So what was your life like as a child?
As a child, my life, I don't know, I was pretty, as a young child, I was a pretty lonely child. Even though I'm the youngest of four, I played a lot by myself and I was definitely a daydreamer. My family went through a lot of trauma early on. My father committed suicide when I was almost 4 years old. And then that had a profound effect on my upbringing, as it would for anyone. The kind of culture in my house, and also at the time, this is the early 90s as well. The culture was very much like, we don't talk about that. Let's move on, sweep it under the carpet. It's very British. And no one really spoke about the reasons why he had died by suicide, or what suicide was, or mental health. Like I didn't even know what mental health was.
And do you think the trauma from losing your dad like that was like directly related to your addiction?
I think it's definitely a contributing factor. It kind of like taught me, because we never spoke about it, and we never kind of like faced the event as a family. We never processed it or grieved. I kind of learned from a very early age that the way that you deal with feelings and emotions, and just life, really, if anything major in your life happens, you avoid it and you ignore it and you don't process it, you just move on. And that kind of taught me to escape, which is what I did with alcohol and drugs. I didn't want to face my problems or my feelings or emotions, so I just drank them away.
And what was like your earliest like memories, like what's your earliest memory of like emotions like related to that? What do you think, like, can you remember anything?
I remember really hating myself when I was a kid because I felt abandoned and I felt like I wasn't good enough for my parent to stick around for me, which I know now not to be true. But that's how I felt as a kid, because I didn't understand it, because we never spoke about it. And nothing was ever explained to me. And I kind of had to figure it out along the way. So I really, really hated myself. And I just thought I was like a really bad human being because my father didn't want to raise me, basically. And yeah, it was a lot of self-loathing around that.
And have you had to process like feelings related to your dad's suicide in recovery?
Yeah. It's something that I still massively deal with, and I always will. Like, it's the event of like a parent dying by suicide, and then everything, the ripples from that, just affects you, especially when you're a kid. It affects you for the rest of your life because, you know, it affects the way that you develop and the way that you think about yourself, the way you relate to yourself, the way you relate to others. Like, it just messes everything up, basically. And now at the age of 36, I'm in therapy twice a week, dealing with all this, basically unpicking all this trauma of the past that kind of, you know, snowballed from this early childhood experience.
So it's safe to say that, in your opinion, therapy is like crucial.
Yeah, big time. And for my recovery, but then also for my mental health, because alongside my alcoholism and my drug using and stuff, I have borderline personality disorder, and addiction is really, really common in people with BPD, because it's people with BPD find it very difficult to manage their emotions, and drinking,
self-medicating.
Yeah, drinking and drugs makes it easier to manage emotions because you don't feel them.
Yeah. And what is living sober like? What's it like to live sober with BPD?
It is difficult. It's easier to live sober with BPD than it was when I was drinking, because I'm a lot more in control of myself and I have a lot more clarity.
Right.
Also, when I'm overwhelmed and I'm freaking out and I don't know what's going on, I can actually mentalize and think, and I have the clarity to think about things rationally. Or I have the ability to kind of like step back and then think about things. Which when I was drinking and using drugs, I was just a ball of chaos and I didn't think about anything. I just reacted continuously.
So how old were you when you drank for the first time? And was it like from the very beginning, was it like straight to like a blackout? Like, did you do that, like drink excessively from the very beginning?
Yeah. Yeah, big time. I started drinking, I must have been about 14, which isn't uncommon for kids in this country, really. And it's not uncommon for kids that I grew up in a village where there was nothing to do apart from teenage drinking, basically. So yeah, it's really quite normal for kids to just start drinking cider in the park. And yeah, that's what I did. I remember when I started drinking, it was like I liked it straight away. It made me feel quite normal, because I'd always felt like an outsider. Even though I had lots of friends growing up, I always felt like I was really misunderstood and I didn't particularly understand anyone else. And drinking made me kind of just feel like I was connected to people and I was normal and I wasn't this freak and I wasn't like majorly messed up. And so I wanted to keep that feeling. And like many alcoholics, when I started drinking, even from a young age, I couldn't stop.
Right. Did you experience consequences from the very beginning?
Not really. I was already like what you would call a problem child, even though I hate that term because actually I was a child in a lot of like pain and emotional pain, who was lashing out. I wasn't a problem, that needed to be fixed. I just needed to be helped and supported. But I was already like getting in loads of trouble before I started drinking. And I was already like playing up at school and not going to school, which was what I got in trouble most for, actually. So I didn't really receive consequences from the get-go because I was already doing quite poorly. Yeah. It was only into adulthood when the consequences came.
I find that when it comes to like children here in the UK, like the resources are lacking like significantly. Do you feel that you had like that experience? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I have younger nieces. I have teenage nieces, and they talk about their school now, and they have a mental health department in their school, and they have people that they can go to if they need help. And then also, kids nowadays know what mental health is.
Right.
Whereas when I was a teenager and I was acting out, it was like literally just got tarred with the problem child brush, and it was like, okay, how do we deal with this? We suspend her, we give her detention, we keep her out of classes, like rather than noticing that, like, why is this child not playing up? Like maybe we need to, why is this child playing up? Like maybe we need to support this kid or find out what the problem is, which definitely didn't happen when I was a kid.
Right.
But I think probably does now.
Did you ever get in any trouble with like the police or anything like that?
Not in a big way. Like the police used to take me home all the time. But I grew up in a village, like people knew each other, everyone knew each other by name. And like the police would pick us up for underage drinking and we'd get taken home or we'd get taken to a friend's house or something. And like, yeah, it was never anything.
That almost, I mean, that's kind of part of the problem, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. They just,
that's why you didn't have any consequences.
Yeah.
You know?
That's it. I never learned my lesson.
So I saw on your Instagram that you kind of like drank your way around the world. Do you feel like you were trying to like pull like what we call in recovery, like a geographical, just to like escape your problems essentially?
Yeah, definitely. So I left London when I was 23 to go backpacking. I'd saved up a bit of money. And I had enough money for a flight to Thailand and to go to Australia for a little bit. So I did that. It was supposed to be a 6-month backpacking trip, but it ended up being about 10 years. Wow. Because once I flew to Southeast Asia and I was out on my own, I kind of realized that I could live this life of like no responsibility really. I went to Thailand and then got a job in a bar like immediately, and was being paid in booze, drugs, and a hostel. So I was like, oh, this is fantastic. I get to do what I love doing the most, which is partying. And I realized that I could live without consequences, basically. I could just drink all the time. I could escape my feelings, all those feelings of self-loathing and self-hatred and not being able to understand myself or my emotions. I could just drink them away. And then I could also physically escape. I could just like hop from one country to the other, picking up random jobs and not taking on responsibilities and not having any ties apart from the friends that I made along the way. And I could, just live absolutely recklessly. And so that was my geographicals.
And did it get worse every time you went to like a different place or something? Like what happened? What was like the progression of it?
I mean, I think it got worse when I moved to Australia because I lived in Southeast Asia for 4 years, living that backpacker lifestyle and just getting jobs in bars and as like a party rep. I worked on a booze cruise in Cambodia for a bit, like stuff like that. And I could just kind of like pay my way and live this reckless lifestyle. And then I moved to Australia and then I had to get a real job and then I had to pay rent, like proper rent.
Expensive rent.
And like live my life that way. But I had developed this drinking problem, which had always been there really. But being in Southeast Asia just really exacerbated it. So then I was just like living in Australia, still trying or still drinking the same amount as I was and still trying to live this party lifestyle that I was back in Southeast Asia. And I did it successfully, but my life is just completely unmanageable because of the drinking problem.
So that was really the first consequences, was the unmanageability, you know? Was it like the feelings associated with it or what was it? When did you have any realization at that point that it was an issue?
Yeah, I mean, I lost a couple of jobs because I turned up drunk. Like I'd always worked in hospitality. So I got some restaurant jobs and then, twice in different jobs I turned up and they were like, you can't be here. You're absolutely wasted. I'm like, no, I'm fine. Like, so there's those consequences. And then like, I knew that I drank more than the regular person. But I just accepted that. I was like, alcohol is just the most important thing in my life. And that's just the way it is. And that's the way I like it, actually. So I have to drink a large amount. That's just who I am. But then the mental health consequences were what really kind of made me realize that I wasn't doing very well because I was deeply depressed, deeply.
When did you get diagnosed with BPD?
When I was about 2 years sober.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so only a couple of years ago, because my life was still unmanageable, even though I'd been sober for 2 years. I was like, why can't I handle life? Like, what the hell?
But you were suffering from it before. It was just the alcohol was like, masking it.
Yeah, masking it big time, which is why it's so like common with people with borderline personality disorder because we drink to self-medicate and to mask it, really.
So I know that having BPD can make it quite hard to have like, relationships, but what was that like mixed with the alcohol as well? Like what kind of experiences did you have in regards to like relationships?
Well, my relationships when I was drinking were incredibly chaotic. I don't know if I would put that down to having BPD or if it was just the alcoholism fueling that. Because I don't really have anything to compare it to, actually. Right. Like I was drinking alcoholically and drinking very heavily, like since I was a teenager. So all my relationships were fueled by BPD and alcohol and drugs. It's only now in sobriety that now I've been in a long-term relationship now, and it's very nice and pleasant. But yeah, I've only got one relationship to compare it to, right? Really. But yeah, my relationships were just awful. I mean, just really, really chaotic. I think being an active alcoholic, I hated myself, right? And so that reflected my relationships. I didn't think I deserved to be treated nicely. And so I got myself into a lot of like bad relationships with people. And then when it comes to my own behavior, I think I had one relationship where the guy ended up kicking me out. And that was because I couldn't stop drinking and shouting at him.
And he wasn't drinking as well?
Not really, no. So this is when I lived in New York. I met this guy when I was abroad and we fell in love. It was very romantic and it definitely should have just ended there, but we decided to keep it going. And he was like, hey, move to America with me. It's going to be great. And so I did. And whenever he was out at work, my alcoholism was really bad at this point. And he didn't know it because we were drinking together abroad. So he took me home to New York and it became very quickly apparent that I was this insane alcoholic who just couldn't stop drinking. So whenever he was at work, I would just drink all of his tequila and he'd get home and I'd just be screaming at him. Which was a shock to him because he thought he just met this like Bridget Jones kind of character, like on a beach in Thailand. And then he took me home and then all of a sudden he's got this drunk British woman just screaming at him every day. So he ended up kicking me out.
So what was it like being kicked out in New York?
Well, it sucked because he woke me up in the middle of the night basically. And I had a working visa for Canada at that point. He woke me up in the middle of the night and he was like, you've got to go. Like you have to, I passed out drunk. And he was like, you've got to go now. And he basically packed my bags for me, piled me into his car and drove me to Newark Airport in the middle of the night and was like, you're going to Canada, just like get out of my life. And then, I flew to Canada to go stay with a mutual friend of ours. But I was like, my own alcoholic behavior had brought me to that point, but I was also like really suicidal. And I was having a mental health crisis basically, and I couldn't help myself. So it was actually really scary, like being like kind of waking up from this sort of drunk stupor, really like sobering up and like being in Canada, being like, how did I get here? Like this is mental.
Right. And what'd you do after that?
I started smoking crack. Is what I did basically. I moved in with my mate there, and then I was at one of my many rock bottoms. My relationship hadn't worked out. I hated myself for it because it was I had destroyed the relationship. Yeah. And I really, really hated myself. And I was just like, I'm just in self-destruct mode. I was in self-destruct mode before, I'm sure you can tell. Yeah, but now it's like, now it was just like another level. And I didn't care. And I was like, I just want to do anything that will hurt me. Like, I just want to hurt myself as much as possible.
And you were addicted to crack then?
I went on a pretty gnarly binge. It was like about 4-month binge.
And what was it like smoking crack?
I mean, it's like hell on earth. Like it was just the worst, being up for days on end in like dark apartments with strangers, and it was just a lot of like, it wasn't fun. It wasn't a fun time. It wasn't partying. It was just like self-loathing and wallowing, but while being very high.
Yeah. All stimulants are like that.
Yeah. I was just upset all the time, and it just made it worse by the fact I was high.
Yeah, like elevated it. Yeah. And what was your biggest regret from active addiction?
Probably the opportunities I squandered. I think just being, I don't know, maybe like when I was in like my early 20s and I'm like this like promising young woman and stuff, like, and maybe I could have had like a really successful career or something, but my priorities lay with drinking because I was an alcoholic and I was completely dependent on it. So the thing that I put first always was alcohol. So I think I ruined a lot of opportunities for myself, and then hurting people that I loved through my alcoholism as well. It's like big regrets as well.
Well, what's your relationship with the people that you like? What's your relationship with like the people that you love now?
Yeah, good. Like I'm close to all my family. They're all legends. Really, like I'm close to all my siblings and stuff. It's quite, I don't know, it's a weird one because a lot of active addiction for me was abroad because I was doing this running away thing.
So they didn't really see it.
So they didn't see it. Or that they just saw my Instagram where it was like me with a cocktail on a beach, like, and you know, they didn't know.
It looked nice.
They didn't know that I'd actually been on like some like 4-day meth bender in like Laos, and then I was like deeply depressed and I couldn't stop drinking or using.
What were you taking? Yaba?
Yeah, yaba. Which is just the worst. Yeah,
what was yaba like?
Just like fucking hectic. Like it's like you smoke like a little red pill and then you blink your eyes and it's 4 days later and you're in some random like person's house, like in a bed you don't know, and it's like, what the hell happened? And it's just like heart palpitations. And I mean, I guess Yabba was a bit fun at some points. Like some points were fun.
Yeah.
It wasn't like my experience with crack where I was just like upset all the time. But it's like, I don't know, with Yabba, it was just, it was so hectic at the time. And then the aftermath was just like devastation for days until you do it again and do that cycle again.
Well, and with the crack, that was like at the end of all of this. So you were like, you know, you were like years past it at that point, right?
Sorry.
Like whenever you were smoking crack, you were like a few years past using yaba.
Oh yeah, but yeah. I just found a new drug to try, a new hyperfixation.
So like you were suffering from addiction in all these different places. Like how did you get through all of this without like any kind of support or anything?
I think just like pure survival mode. Like I didn't have a support system. I had all my friends that I'd party with. But yeah, I wasn't coping. Like I was like living day to day, just surviving, just focused on getting out of my mind as possible. So yeah, I didn't really cope very well at all. Like my coping mechanism without a support system at that time was to drink and to take drugs. Like it's like, oh, if I'm not here mentally, then I'm not really here. It's fine. Everything's fine. So I literally just drank and drugged my way through it.
Did you ever consider like going to rehab throughout all of this?
No, not at all. Like I knew I had problems and I knew I had a drinking problem. And I knew I accepted that I was an alcoholic years and years before I did anything about it. because that was what I I accepted it. I was like, okay, that's my lot in life. That's what, some people get married and have kids and have successful careers. I guess I'm just going to be a depressed drunk. Like, that's my destiny. And I just accepted it. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to make the most of it. This is my life. And so which just spurred me on to drink more. Because I'm like, if I'm destined to be an alcoholic, I'm going to be a massive alcoholic.
Yeah, be the best alcoholic.
Yeah.
Do you feel that going to rehab would have helped you though?
I don't know. It depends how I ended up in rehab. I think if I was forced to go by family members, then I might have seen it as some sort of punishment.
Right.
And it wasn't something that I wanted to do. But I think if I made a decision myself to go to rehab, then it would have been an incredible thing to do.
Yeah, I feel like in the middle of like the chaos that you were in, like that if somebody offered it, you might have seen it as a way out,
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah. Or I might have been like, hey, don't interfere with my destiny of being a depressed drunk. Like,
well, what was your like actual rock bottom moment though?
So I had a few, one after the other. So there was the whole crack thing in Canada, which was like so not good. Like I was very low then. I ended up moving away from the city I was in to get away from the people that I was smoking crack with because I was stuck in this loop. So I was like, right, I'm going to move to British Columbia. So I did that. And then, you know what they say, wherever you go, there you are. Yeah. So I ended up in British Columbia. I was like, right, I'm going to hike and I'm going to go like be at one with the forest. But like that didn't happen at all. I just like I was away from crack, but my drinking ramped up even more, like, which I don't even know how that was possible. But I got a job in a barbecue restaurant and I had no self-control. I hadn't had self-control for years by that point. But, this job in a barbecue restaurant was like, oh, I have a bar here for me. I can just drink as much as I want. So I was drinking every shift and I couldn't stop. Like I'd go into every shift. I'd be like, right, I'm not going to have a sneaky drink behind the bar tonight. I'm just not going to do it. But I would every night. And then one time my boss came in and I drank a bottle of vodka. And I was just wasted. And he was like, what is going on? I don't really remember much of that night. But in the morning, I got a text message and he was like, oh, you need to come in for a meeting. So I went in for a meeting and he was like, well, so obviously you're fired. And also, I think you have a drinking problem. And I was like, yeah, of course I do. And that was pretty bad, losing that job, because that was supposed to be my new start, my new life in British Columbia was supposed to be amazing. And I messed it all up within like the first month. So I felt really, really bad about myself. And then the addiction was getting really bad. My drinking was bad. My mental health was the worst it had been in years. And I was just incredibly depressed and had no support system. And yeah, I was just incredibly suicidal and I did try and take my life and I ended up in a psych ward in Canada. And that was another low moment because it was just like, how did I get here? Like, I don't know, just kind of sitting in my room at the psych ward, like eating a cold meal out of a grey plastic tray. I was just like wearing grippy socks in some weird pajamas. I was just like, how did I get here? Like, why do I want to kill myself so bad? Like, what has gone wrong in my life? And then that was a rock bottom, but it wasn't a wake up call because I left the hospital and I went straight to the liquor store. Like I wasn't like, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to turn things around. I was just like, I'm going to just keep on drinking. That was another real rock bottom.
Have you had to make any amends through recovery?
I haven't had to. I think my sponsor would want me to. We haven't got to that part yet. So I have not made amends. Oh, my sponsor's like, you're going to have to say sorry to David, right? Who's my ex-boyfriend. I'm like, I don't wanna. So I will do, I'm sure, at some point. We've not made it to that point yet, but I don't know. I have the support from my family and stuff, but I never really hurt them, apart from the hurt that I did them was them watching me destroy myself and watching me make really bad choices.
But they had to see it from a distance, kind of, though. You know?
Yeah. So that's how I hurt them. But so I haven't had to make amends with them.
Have you found any kind of like religion or spirituality through recovery?
Yes. Like spirituality is something I feel very connected to, which I love. When I first got sober, I started doing Kundalini yoga, just the yoga of awareness.
Yeah.
And that really helped me spiritually. Just kind of like connecting to myself and connecting to something bigger than myself. And kind of, I don't know, spirituality for me is kind of just realizing that you're not really in control. Don't know who's in control or what's in control, but it's definitely not me. So in recovery, I started kind of thinking about that sort of stuff. And my first year of recovery, I just got obsessed with Kundalini yoga. And like, I don't know, I can turn anything into a drug. I was doing like 3-4 hours of Kundalini yoga a day, like just like meditating myself into escapism. That was really important to me too.
12-step recovery is how you found sobriety?
No, no, it wasn't. I got into 12-step recovery when I was about 18 months sober, I think.
Yep.
I found sobriety and I made the decision to stop drinking because I found myself in my childhood home in 2020 when COVID hit. So I just lost my job at the barbecue restaurant. And then as a twist of fate, everyone else in the town I lived lost their jobs as well because of COVID. And everyone was going home. Like all the backpackers were going home. I'd been away from home for like 10 years at that point, and I wasn't planning on going back to the UK. I was like, I'm going to do this forever until I'm dead. I'm just going to keep on drinking and moving around the world. Watch me. So I never planned to go back to the UK, but COVID hit and I had to. Nobody knew what was going on and I needed to live. So I went back to the UK and moved back in with my mum in the childhood home where I found out my dad killed himself, where I had a really rocky upbringing. Like I basically back to the scene of the crime, like where it all started. And I was just incredibly low. I was recovering from a suicide attempt. I couldn't stop drinking. My life was just such a mess and I was so low. And I didn't know what I needed to do to change it, but I knew I had to do something. And I think just being at home, like I carried on drinking as soon as I got back to my mum's house, of course. I'm an alcoholic. What else am I going to do? But I think being in my childhood home, it was like putting a mirror up to myself.
Right.
Like I was reflecting big time, like reflecting on just like what the hell had happened over like the last like 15 years of my life. So I remember the day I was like sat on my childhood bed and I just cleaned my room of all the bottles, all the empty bottles. I remember like dropping the clinking bag of shame on the floor. I just sat on my bed and then it just clicked. Like I had that epiphany. I was just like, oh my God, it's alcohol. Like all of my problems, really. And the reasons why I'm not solving my problems is because it's alcohol. I can't stop drinking. I'm drunk all the time. And I realized that alcohol was just destroying my life and drugs as well. But by that point, alcohol was the one thing I was powerless against. Like with the drugs, like I don't know if I'd call it an addiction, because it was more of a method to further destroy myself and to further hurt myself. But alcohol has always been the one thing that I was powerless against, and I had no say in at all. So in that moment, I just realized that to be happy, or to have a shot of happiness, or just not being miserable, I had to stop drinking.
Yeah. So what led you to the 12 steps?
So I got sober by myself. I just stopped drinking, and then I lived my life for 18 months.
Did you have withdrawals?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, really quite severely. I was like hallucinating and kind of going through like hot flushes, and I was like slipping in and out of consciousness. Like it was really, really dangerous. I didn't know how dangerous.
Dangerous, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know it was a thing. Like I knew when you stop drinking, like you might get the shakes or something, but I didn't know that it was something so dangerous and something so serious until afterwards. Now I think, wow, that was very irresponsible. But you know what? That behavior doesn't surprise me from me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and if you never experienced it because you were drinking the whole entire time, how would you know?
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Know?
Exactly. So I was sober for 18 months through sheer will, just pure self-will.
Were you struggling though?
I didn't for the first 18 months. I didn't struggle really. You know, I think like the first few months I was like, I really want to drink. Like I wanted to like kind of be normal and party with my friends and stuff like that. And the temptation to drink was always there. Like every time I felt a feeling, I was like, I should probably drink right now. So that was tough. It was difficult. But I really started to struggle when I was about 18 months sober, because I'd done it completely by myself by that point.
Yeah.
Like I just read a few books and listened to a few podcasts, and I was like, I'm an expert. I don't need anybody. And then things started going wrong in my life. Like I was doing really poorly at work. Some of my friends were pissed off at me, and I was becoming miserable again. I was getting depressed again.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's going on? I stopped drinking. I thought I'd fix this. Like I thought I fixed the problem. And that wasn't so. I was like, why is my life becoming unmanageable again? And then one of my friends was in AA, someone that I knew. And he was like, do you want to come to a meeting with me? You might find it like helpful. And I was like, yes. I mean, I think by that point I knew that change was a really good thing. Like changing your approach to life, to anything was a really good thing. It was a really positive thing. So when I had the opportunity to go to AA with someone, I was like, yes, like I need to do something different, because whatever I'm doing right now is not working, because I'm miserable again. And then, that's how I got introduced to 12-step fellowship.
And do you think that the 12 steps is like an end-all be-all solution, or do you think that people can find like other paths to recovery?
Definitely people can find other paths to recovery. Like I did to begin with. Yeah. It just wasn't sustainable for me. But I think it is sustainable for some people. I know for me, 12 steps really helped me, and having that support and actually talking properly about what's going on with other people who also have similar things going on was really helpful for me.
So you feel that the connection part of like meetings is like super helpful.
Yeah, the connection part, but then also the steps themselves.
Yeah.
Because like spirituality and kind of spiritual principles and things like that are really important to me now. They weren't when I was drinking.
Yeah.
Vodka was important to me when I was drinking. But also, I think, the spiritual side of AA and kind of connecting to a higher power and understanding the concept of a higher power away from a religious context, I think is really, really important and very helpful, especially when it comes to kind of like getting outside of your own head.
What would you say to people that struggle with the concept of a higher power, that don't believe in like necessarily religion or God? What would you say to those people?
maybe think about what it is to be religious and what it is to be spiritual. I think understanding the difference between religion and spirituality is really important, because they are separate things in my mind. I think when people, I don't know, sometimes when I mention to people that I'm in AA, everyone's like, oh, you're a hardcore Christian then. I'm like, well, no, it's not. That's not it. That's not what that is. So I think there's a lot of like misconceptions. Yeah. And like people reach out to me sometimes and like, oh, how do you go to AA and get past the Jesus thing? Like there is no, what Jesus thing? I've literally never heard that word in a meeting before. Yeah. Like no one's talking about Jesus and Christianity here. So there's so many misconceptions about that. Like for me, higher power is just like, it's not God. It's not Jesus Christ. It's not a bearded man in the sky or any kind of religious God. It is just something that's not me. And I think something that's been really important to me in sobriety is kind of having a reality check when it comes to my ego. When I'm like, oh, I'm not the center of the universe. Right. Like I'm not this thing that things happen to. There's actually a massive world out there. And, you know, kind of having a higher power and sort of believing in a higher power kind of takes me out of that self-absorbed thinking, because I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, there is, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like some alien that is controlling everything, but I don't need to know what it is. All I know is that I'm not doing it. It's not me. Right. I can take responsibility for what I do, but, you know, I'm like, I don't have all this power. Right.
Love that. Has recovery been like kind of constant for you, or have there been ups and downs? And if there have been ups and downs, how have you managed it?
Well, there's the down of my life becoming unmanageable again. And I dealt with that by going to AA and seeking another way. Yeah. And changing. But yeah, like, yeah, it's all ups and downs. It's I don't know, some months I have more downs than ups. I deal with my mental health a lot as well. So a lot of like downs come from that, but I deal with that. But I don't know, I just remember that like, if I'm really depressed right now, like the one thing that's going to make it even worse is if I have a drink or if I start taking drugs again. Right. Because I don't have a desire to destroy myself anymore. Like I actually like want to preserve myself these days. Like I'm not on this mission to annihilate me. Yeah. So I know that when I do struggle, which is a lot, I know that drinking's not the answer. Destroying myself isn't the answer. Right. So I remind myself of that a lot.
So recovery has given you like the ability to kind of live manageably through the ups and downs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. It's I always thought that like I was coping by drinking. And now I cope by not drinking.
What has been the worst thing of sobriety?
The worst thing. I say the worst thing as like, you know, there's no bad stuff really in sobriety, because any stuff that you do uncover, it's just stuff that's already been there, and it's just part of the human experience. Like it's not necessarily bad. It might be difficult, but it's just a thing that makes you human. But you know, it's really difficult to live with the reasons why I drank without being able to medicate those reasons with alcohol. Yeah. Like I still deal with the self-hatred and the not feeling good enough, really low self-esteem. I deal with that all the time, and I can't fix that with drinking. Like I don't get the temporary Band-Aid, which, you know, at the time just feels so good and is so effective, but the long-term effects are like devastating. Right. Yeah. there's that. I mean, like, I don't have any desire to drink anymore. And I'm not sure if that's, well, no, that's definitely because I'm a recovering alcoholic. But then also I'm 36 now and I just want to watch Netflix with my boyfriend. I don't want to go out like partying and stuff. So I don't miss the partying side.
Do you think it's safe for people to party in sobriety though?
It depends on what you're doing. Like, I go to house parties like once every few months.
Like a get together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like
you wouldn't go to the club though?
No. And like, I don't know. Thing is, I don't know if that's because I'm a recovering alcoholic or I'm just a recluse, or if that's just my age of wanting to settle down and kind of having different interests. Because I have sober friends who do go clubbing and who love it. But I just me personally, I have no desire to go clubbing. I think I just like it doesn't interest me. So yeah, people can be sober and still like I know people who go to nightclubs. I know if I was at like a party and I go to parties where people are getting drunk a lot. And like I'm always, I don't know, I feel comfortable in those situations, but mainly because I'm there with my close friends.
It's not tempting to you.
No, not at all. I've never been to a house party where people are doing drugs that I know of. I've never been at a house party where people are openly doing drugs. I don't think I'd enjoy that. I think that would be really uncomfortable for me. But yeah, when everyone else is getting drunk and I'm sober, like there is that small like window of time when you're drinking, when your friends are drinking, when they're really fun before they start like talking over each other and repeating themselves and get really annoying. Yeah. There is a little window there when my friends are getting drunk that it's actually really fun to be around them.
Right. And then you leave whenever they get annoying.
Yeah. And then I go home and I watch a true crime documentary and I get all the texts in the group chat the next morning. They're like, oh, I'm so hungover. And I'm like, should have gone home and watched a true crime documentary then, shouldn't you?
Love that. So what does your family think of your recovery?
They're really proud of me. They're really, really proud of me. Like, I hid a lot from them, but now I'm very open with them. Like, they ask me questions and I answer them and I tell them about my experiences now. And I talk to them a lot about like the things I learned, because a lot of the things that I learned being in recovery are things that you can apply to everyday life. Right. Like, you know, that could apply to people who are dealing with like a toxic boss or something, you know. Those recovery lessons can apply to things like that. So I talk about the lessons I learned and they're just really proud of me. We have a really good relationship now. Do
you ever crave the effects that like drugs or alcohol gave you? Like, you know, the first time you used and it was like that feeling, like that rush of satisfaction almost?
I say like sometimes like I just think, oh, wouldn't a little relapse be nice? Like just a little one, like oh, if I could just like go party for a weekend and then that could be that, and then you know, and then I could just go back to my normal life, but I wouldn't be able to go back to my normal life because I'd be drinking again, and I would be going down the rabbit hole. But you know, I do miss the excitement sometimes. Like sometimes it's like, I don't know, like the rush of falling in love. Like it's like that. Like I sort of miss that buzz, and I sometimes think, oh, that would just be so much fun to do right now. But very quickly I come back to reality and I'm like, oh, that would actually be a terrible thing to do because I'd be back in that horrible place I was in before. Whenever
you experience like that craving, you know, quote unquote craving, do you think it's because like something else is going on in your life that's like triggering that feeling?
Yeah, it's usually like when I think, oh, I would just love to escape right now. It's triggered by something difficult I'm feeling. Yeah. And there's, you know, something has caused that difficult feeling. Something's caused me to be triggered. Something stressed me out. Yeah.
What would you say to somebody that is struggling with addiction that has found it hard to accept help from their loved ones?
I would say that, like, just as human beings, like, none of us can do this alone. Like, none of us can do life alone. Like, it's impossible. And when you attempt it, you quickly find out that it's not an enjoyable experience. So, like, accepting, like, support and help from loved ones is just a fantastic thing you can do for yourself. It's like, it's a great gift you can give yourself, actually. And, like, you know, it is difficult. It's really difficult accepting help, because it means you actually have to do the work and you actually have to kind of face your demons when you accept help. I think accepting help is often like a commitment. It's like, okay, I commit to getting better, perhaps. And that's really, really, really scary. But it is just a fantastic thing you can do for yourself. It's like the best gift you can give yourself.
Do you ever experience like shame or guilt of like stuff that you did before?
Yeah, I do. But like, when it comes to shame, I think, look, I've pissed myself in public so many times. Like, shame, I just quickly move on from it.
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I just did so many just awful things and embarrassing things when I was drunk. And like, I'm still here today. And, you know, the fact I pissed myself on the tube hasn't affected my life right now, you know.
Right.
Like, it's it's just it's something that I move on very quickly. Like, I feel most guilty about the way that I treated the past me.
Yeah.
She deserved better.
Right.
Like, I don't know. It feels like I'm like the keeper of that woman, and I should have looked after her better, but
Right.
I didn't. I stuffed my face with drugs and alcohol and pissed myself on the tube. Like, and I feel like I failed her a little bit. So I do feel guilt about that. And then how I deal with that is by I'm doing better right now. Like, so
Yeah.
I think,
So
like,
you've accepted it.
Yeah, I've accepted it. And I know that I'm going to continue doing better. And also I give myself a bit of grace and compassion, because like, I was in so much pain. Like, I had been through some horrible things. I had like really like horrible traumas and stuff. And I'm like, I give myself a break. I'm like, okay, that woman was just in so much pain, and this is how you dealt with it at the time. And we're not going to do that anymore. So yeah, I just give myself some self-compassion.
Has sharing on social media helped you in your recovery?
Yes, I think so. Like, it really helps me process how I feel and how I'm thinking and some of the things I went through.
Yeah.
Like, I'll make a piece of content and then I'll be like, wow, I had no idea I felt that way. For me, it's quite healing. And yeah.
Well, you share very honestly on there, so. Yeah.
I think it helps me come to terms with some things, and just process what on earth happened, you know, and helps me process how I'm feeling about things.
Right. If there was one thing you could change about your past, what would it be?
I think I would have, if I could change one thing, I would deprioritize partying and drinking. Like, maybe got an education, picked a career and stuck with it. I think I just change like where in the list of things that are important to me, where alcohol sits. Like, if I could change, I don't know. I think some people in their like 20s and stuff prioritize relationships or jobs and stuff like that, and then have drinking maybe like the number 3 thing they do, at least, or something like that. Like,
right.
I would change it from being my number 1 thing. I just push it a bit further down the list so I could develop other areas of my life rather than just the partying area, which I'm very good at now.
If you could go back to before, like right at the beginning of your alcoholism, what would you say to yourself?
I would say you're worth so much more. I would say you don't have to do this. Like, there is another way that you can live your life without trying to annihilate yourself. And yeah, I would just say you deserve better, you're worth better. Because, you know, that's why I kind of got so dependent on alcohol, was because I hated myself so much and I didn't think I deserved anything better. So I would reassure myself that, hey, you're not a terrible person. You're not the worst person in the world. Like, you can treat yourself a bit more kindly.
And at the beginning of your sobriety, what would you say to yourself?
I would say it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay if it's not pretty all the time. It's okay if it's not like perfect. And I would make sure the past me knew that just because I'm not feeling really good all the time and really good about myself and I'm not positive and have this newfound optimism all the time, just because I'm not feeling that way doesn't mean I'm doing it wrong. Like, you can feel sad and be sober and you're still sober and it still counts, you know?
Yeah. Do you think that relapse is a part of recovery or is it a part of active addiction?
Part of recovery. I myself have never relapsed. But I could, and it would be part of my recovery.
Do you think though that relapse happens whenever recovery is like lacking?
I think it's really complicated. Depending on the person, and you know, it could happen for all sorts of different reasons. I've heard people talk about not relapsing when their partner like randomly died, you know, or not relapsing when they were diagnosed with a terminal illness. But I've heard other people who have relapsed on a random Wednesday because they're in a supermarket and they saw a miniature bottle of wine after being 14 years sober. Like, it could happen for any kind of reason. Yep. I just think it's what happens afterwards, which is what's important.
What are your dreams for the future now that you're sober?
I would like to finally have that career that I feel like I missed out on, or an education that I feel like I missed out on because I was in active addiction. Those are my dreams. I've got the love thing down. Like, I'm in a very stable relationship with an amazing person. And I finally found that healthy relationship and I feel like I've nailed it. It's not perfect. Nothing is. But I've done the love thing. That's a tick. And we're not engaged, but we will be getting married. He's the best. So I feel like I would really like to find a career that will allow me to be creative, and just something that I really love doing. Because I don't feel like I've found that yet. Like, not my purpose, because my purpose is just to be me, but like, I don't know, that vocation that right. I'm kind of like destined for. I think I'm yet to find that. And that's something that sobriety is going to give me, because I couldn't do anything when I was... You couldn't
do it before, yeah.
No, not when I was in active addiction. But yeah, now I'm in sobriety. That's my future. That's coming for me.
If somebody was on a relapse right now, what would you tell them to do?
I would tell them to remind themselves that this isn't the end. Like, a relapse isn't like the full stop at the end of your story. There is recovery after relapse, you know. If you take a detour, you know, you can always go back to the path you were on. So I'd remind them that. And then also to seek help, you know.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, not connecting to others and not asking for help is just what keeps us in active addiction. You know, it's isolating ourselves just keeps us in that horrible place. So reach out to people who love you.
Love that. Are you happy today?
No. No. I don't know anyone who is happy, I don't think. What is happiness? I don't know. I know that I'm in a way better situation than I was before, million times over. Like, I don't know, I feel joy sometimes. And I feel stable and I feel healthy. Happy isn't the word, but you know, I have things in my life that bring me joy. I have an amazing relationship, you know, with someone I love. And that brings me happiness some days. I think, yeah, I'm a lot better off for sure.
Love that. That was an honest answer. I can appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
This was the Steps Together podcast. Thank you so much, Abby. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.